The Terminator franchise has been low on ideas for years. Is a little-known TV show from 2008 its salvation? Let's talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. Daniel, can you please let the people know what we're going to be discussing today?
So this is Have You Seen, in which we talk about a movie that some of us are seeing for the first time and others know well. This week we're trying something a little bit different, where instead of a movie, we're talking about the pilot episode of a show. We're starting with Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles from 2008, which ran for 2 seasons and essentially picked up where Terminator 2 had left off, where Sarah and John Connor are on the run, mostly from the law, following the events of Terminator 2, and they're kind of preparing for Judgment Day. In the pilot, for the first time in several years, a Terminator catches up with them. And then it turns out there's another Terminator has also been sent back in time to protect John, and the 3 of them then fight off the Terminator and activate a time machine that has been kind of put in place to catapult them forwards a few years in time to kind of shake the Terminators that are after them. And then they go and try to take the fight to Cyberdyne. I've seen the entire thing through about twice over the years, and the two of you just saw the pilot for the first time. So what were your overall impressions?
It was actually quite interesting. It added like a new kind of flavor to the Terminator experience for me. And weirdly, it felt like a season finale, which is really random. Like, it gave me like really like nostalgic vibes in terms of like, so TV shows set back in late 2000s, things like your Smallville, Prison Break, and stuff like that. It was like it's completely different to how TV shows kind of like are run and feel in today's age. But the reason I said it felt like a season finale, because like so much was happening in that first episode. Like the Terminators coming to sort of John's school. It was like really like fast paced, and then the whole like setup for them going into the future, which is like super interesting. In today's age, that would feel like the end of like season 1 to then like lead on to season 2, 3, 4, etc. And that was all into one episode at the start of the series. So it was definitely cool. I kind of thought John Connor's would have been maybe a little bit different in this movie, considering he's kind of like supposedly meant to have had like lived experiences of like being chased by Terminator and this, that, and the other. And I get he's like maybe a little bit of an angsty teen and maybe wants to just live his life and doesn't want to sort of fulfill the prophecies, but you've had lived experiences of like what's coming in the future and your role in this, that, and the other. So I kind of felt that he was a little bit off in this series. Sarah Connors, I thought she was cool. She had like sort of the same kind of like intensity that the original actor had in Terminator 2, where she's like cold, very like focused on the mission, very like hard on John throughout like the whole like of the first episode, which is like pretty cool. It's pretty like in terms of like the Terminators that they like introduced in this. I mean, firstly, the bad guy doesn't really give off good vibes, to be fair. Like in terms of like his presence isn't the same as like the Terminators that you get in like the Terminator 1 and 2, but I think that's probably to be expected because it's a TV series as compared to it being a movie. So I kind of give him a little bit of leeway on that. I thought it was like very typical that they'd have the female Terminator kind of be of like similarity to John, and then have like this like the love interest in there. So there was a lot of like cool things happening in there. I think it definitely left off the first episode in a really like interesting place, because like you've always had this dynamic of like the Terminators like coming back to them and like hunting them down in this and the other. Now it's like the reverse of it. It's like they're going ahead into the future and they're going to like stop what's to come. So it's a really interesting dynamic, and I would say a very good first episode, very action packed and lots of stuff happening.
For me, even though it felt less robotic, it didn't really have that intensity or that. Like the stakes didn't really feel too high when a Terminator was coming after you in this series in comparison to the movies. That being said, after watching episode 1, I will be going back to watch episode 2. I thought that this was a build-up. Like first it started off pretty weak, but it felt pretty TV. You know what I'm saying? I thought, okay, this might not work because obviously Terminator in the movie format is, you know what I'm saying, like the stakes for it was high. So watching it in like a TV format, you can kind of like things just feel a bit like underdeveloped in terms of like it could be acting, it just could be like the whole aesthetic look, just all different factors. So at first I wasn't really digging it, but then it was a slow build up, especially when Summer was introduced. That's for me, it became more ripping. Like I was like, oh crap, because that was like an unexpected moment. But there was a scene where there was an interesting turn where John pretty much was begging Sarah just for like a normal life. And then I was surprised that she actually agreed, because even the way that they introduced Sarah in this series, which was great, by the way, because I just love the development of that character, and I love the fact that now they're filling us in a time period which we didn't get to see. But yeah, you can still see her tough love even getting stronger than it was before. I'm like, damn, the fact that Sarah agreed to do what John asked, we'll get spoiled later. I was like, okay, this is an interesting new mission, and yeah. So I think this was a really good start, and it was a really good sequel slash prequel. Yeah, I'm just kind of I was surprised. I'll be honest with you, I was very surprised because, like I said, it looked very TV, and I just like, yeah, it didn't feel the same. Like even the Terminator just didn't feel the same. But then I think what they've utilized is they've given the Terminators in this one they're more human-like in terms of like their emotions. Especially like with Summer, you can tell that she's different from any other Terminators. Even John clocked it. He's like, you're not the same as like any other Terminators I've ever come across. And so, and then there was even her response to him, there was mystery behind it. So yeah, it's a interesting journey. I feel like it's going to be an interesting journey that I'm surprised. I'm surprised because I'm gonna tune into episode 2 because it just felt like a good story. I think that's a strong point.
I think the big challenge any show like this has is that it goes from a big budget movie to a TV show, right? And you kind of led into that, but we can talk about that a little bit more. Like, does that work? Like, does this feel like Terminator? Does it feel like the cheap version? Does it feel like they can't do what they want to do, or they're trying to do something but it doesn't work because they don't have the budget and the scale to do it?
Promise what I think they're doing the franchise justice. I think they're doing a good job so far because I think what they're doing is concentrating on just a good story. So they know that they have limitations, and their focus on now is purely just making the story interesting. And it's a time period which we haven't seen yet. And I feel like that is a very chunky time period. I think it'll be very hard for you to create a good movie in that time period where obviously there's, the relationship dynamic between John and Sarah and how they kind of like develop into, how they both develop into freaking icons in this universe. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's good they've done it in a series format because there's a lot that can be uncovered. And so far it's good. I think, like I said, the story seems very interesting. And the Terminators seem more, like I said, they seem more human.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Because when I first was watching it, especially because you got different actors playing, the key roles as well in terms of like Sarah Connors and John Connors as well, and like you're seeing an older John Connors as well. So like, there's a lot of things initially that's kind of striking to you and just kind of like taking you aback a little bit. But like you said, is that as you like start to delve into like the story and as they kind of like start to like show the characters a little bit more, you kind of just start to find yourself falling into the universe and kind of just like feeling comfortable with everything that's kind of going on screen. So I think you're right. They're focusing on the right things.
And we get a lot in the episode, right? We get multiple Terminator on Terminator fights. We get chases. We get explosions. We get car chases. We go back to I didn't check if Miles's family was the same actors as before.
I don't think so.
I don't think so, right?
I don't think so.
But the set looks a lot like the real place, right? Like they could have done that cheaper. They're going all out in this episode, right? You can imagine like a Terminator show where the first Terminator fight happens kind of at the end of the first season or something, and there's a lot of build up to it, but you don't really get a full fight. And here we get 2 or 3 in the first episode, and I think it really sets the tone of we're trying to continue what the movies before us did, and if you accept that it's going to be a bit smaller scale, then we're going to have some stories to tell you. I think that pilot really sells that idea.
Question though, so this is kind of a critique. I can excuse Summer, which is the John's protector, the Terminator. I can excuse her being more human-like, which is fine. But in terms of like the actual Terminator that's after John, why doesn't he seem more, like I said, robotic? Because I think like with Arnold, right, he just felt more robotic and more sinister, and there wasn't really much money. I don't think besides when he got hurt, cool, like you can see the inner workings of the metallic stuff, and you can see his robotness, right? But he was still like he was still human playing as a robot, so there wasn't much like CGI or just technical stuff going into his scenes. So I'm confused as to why it feels like the Terminator now just feels less less Terminator. He feels like the cheap version, the 2.0. Why is it like? I don't think this has anything to do with the budget though, because like I said, like in terms of like the visual look of it, it doesn't really look too different. There's certain scenes that make it look cheap, like when there's certain explosion and stuff, fine. But in terms of just like a scene where you're seeing like the Terminator walk, for example, it just feels less robotic. And I think that is not a downfall, but that is a problem for me. Like, why?
I think like just to add to that as well is like his like first introduction as well, when they're like in the police car and then he's like walking up to them. It's like a dream sequence, and it's actually a little confusing as to why she sees the actual Terminator, that's the one that's actually after them, when she hasn't seen him before. That's a little bit confusing, to be fair. But even there, like you can tell from a mile off he's a Terminator, but at the same time you're just like, there's something off about him. In that, that's like the fact again, and that's like when they're like bedding you in, and that's when they're like kind of like getting you comfortable with sort of a lower budget of sort of the same universe. But that scene stood out to me particularly.
Yeah, but that scene doesn't. That's what my point is. That scene doesn't require a big budget though. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. That's why I'm a bit confused, because like that's when I saw that scene in the beginning, that kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. I was like, this is looking like a.
But I think possibly it's like the pitfalls of sort of a smaller budget on TV is that you can't get a better actor for it. Not to say that Arnold was sort of one of the best actors at the time, but he kind of fit the role essentially for that time period.
I think they really struck gold back in 1984 with Arnold, and then again with the T-1000 in Terminator 2, and there was Terminator 3 came out in 2003, so this comes out after Terminator 3 a couple of years, but before Terminator Salvation. So at this point we've seen just a few Terminators, right? And I don't really see like that the portrayal of the Terminators, like the demeanor and how they act and speak, is the problem. I think you can see the budget in some of the fight scenes, like that scene where the Terminator has taken Sarah hostage at their apartment, and then there's a fight between him and Cameron, the other Terminator. Like from the fight choreography, you can see a little bit that this is a TV show, not a movie, right? But what was it about the acting where you didn't quite buy that this was a Terminator? Because I had the complete opposite impression.
It was mainly with the beginning. For me, like, so that's why I was gonna add in, like, throughout the movie it started to grow a bit, so he started to get better. I think because of the introduction of Cameron, then I saw the actual Terminator in a different light, so it became more intenser. So like just the environment that he was put in, I think that's what made him better. But in the beginning, when he was introduced, it just felt like the 2.0 version. I don't know what it was. I don't think it's because our love for Arnold's, like how Arnold played. I don't think it's that. I just think, when something's TV, it just looks TV. And it's so hard to explain why it looks TV. But it just looked TV. The way that he walked, the look, like it wasn't, it was like he was just playing as a Terminator. Whereas I think, sorry to add quickly, like when Cameron came in, right? I think what made it interesting is because we thought she was actually human. And then when she had the emotions, the facial expressions of a human. And then when she just switched straight face back into a Terminator, I think that's when I was like, ooh. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Whereas him, you know what I'm saying? So maybe that's why I'm gravitating more towards Cameron, because it was like a switch in her in her transformation from a human to a Terminator, and then she can do it back and forth. So there's a bit of intrigue and a bit of mystery behind her character, which is why I'm gravitating towards more. In terms of the Terminator himself, I don't know, man. And he's growing on me though. Don't get twisted. He's growing on me, but it's not by much.
Yeah, I think what I really latched onto is how they really nail the feel of the Terminator, right? So these characters are heavy and they move, and the sound of it, like every time they get injured or they get punched, you have this like hammer on anvil kind of thing, and every time they move and every time they fall and every time they get hit by a shot, it feels heavy, and I think that is like the essence of what you need to do to make it feel like Terminator. Like these can't do acrobatic backflips or something. They have to be heavy, they have to be slow, they have to be unyielding. And I think that it does. Not quite on the same standard that a movie would, but it definitely hits that feel that it needs to have. Then they know what the Terminator needs to feel like and they do it within their budget. And I think they deserve credit on that basis. Going specifically to Cameron. So this is not the first female Terminator. There was one in Terminator 3. So this is kind of mixing things, like where there's they've got the Terminator from Terminator 2 sent back to protect John, and they have the idea of the female Terminator from Terminator 3, so they're taking bits and pieces from different movies, right? But she's the protector of John so that they can have bigger action scenes, right? Like they can have fights against the Terminators as opposed to just running away all the time. And I'm guessing the fights would be easier to film and cheaper to film than big gunfights as well. But also she gives an insight into the Terminator, right? Like you get additional scenes like in Terminator 2 where the Terminator talks about his programming and what things look like from a Terminator perspective, and we get that here again. So you've kind of alluded to the fact that you think her demeanor is really, really strong, right? Where she sells the idea of a machine that's pretending to be human, right? Specifically that switch where she's undercover at the school, and then her demeanor is completely different when her cover is blown and John and Sarah know that she's a Terminator, right?
Yeah.
So you want to expand on that?
I think what makes her kind of like more interesting is the fact that she's just got like personality, but you can tell it's programmed personality, because like even when she's talking to John, right, there's a scene where they were at the they call it gas station, I think it's petrol station, right, and then John was like he was like, I'm not surprised, like a pretty girl like you, like going for a guy like me, whatever, right? And then it was like she was just looking at him, and you can tell there wasn't really nothing on her mind, but you didn't know if there was something on her mind, but you could tell that she was processing what he was saying, and then she successfully processed it, and then she responded human-like, but it was still robotic.
Slightly off, right?
Exactly. So it was like just like her personality and the way that she kind of like plays that role as a. You can tell that she's trying to fight. There's something about her that tells me that she's trying to fight to be human, or she's fighting against something. Either it is to be human or not to be human. Because I think if she's fighting not to be human, makes sense because she doesn't want to get too attached. So I'm not sure if they can feel anything, because at the end of Terminator 2, I remember Arnold said something about he understands why humans cry now. And it was like Arnold felt something, but I don't think he did feel now. He just understood it, and it made it seem to the audience that he felt something, but really he didn't. So with her, I don't know if her programming, which adds more mystery, because like remember the scene where she said she's different. So is there a thing where she can now feel something? So there's like a lot of mystery behind the way that she's acting and her personality, which is why I think it's more like it's just her character is very interesting. It's very interesting. Like her Terminator model is very interesting. So I'm just intrigued to find out more what she can do.
I have a question on that as well, because there's that scene obviously like that you're talking about when they're having that conversation by the petrol station, and then I can't remember the question he asked, but then she like picks up a chip out of his like bag and eats it. And is that like the first time that we've seen a Terminator consume anything? And is that like meant to be done intentionally to like make her feel more human in this series as well?
I think that's to show that she's more advanced, or more in the sense of being more lifelike.
Yeah.
As far as I remember the show, she is just a Terminator. Like they don't take it to a different level of this Terminator is more human-like or anything like that. She's more of an infiltrator type, where she's better at looking and seeming human, and her demeanors, and she can do things like eat, which I don't think any other movie has really gone to that situation. But you can see how that's how you would blow the cover off a Terminator, right? Because originally they were meant to be infiltrators. They were meant to infiltrate human settlements in order to smoke out the resistance. They weren't originally meant to be the unstoppable killing machines, right? And I think neither of the movies that really comes across because they don't really seem lifelike and really human, right? Now we have a version where the Terminator is more for a human who is maybe a bit awkward, but still human. And I've got good news. In the rest of the show, they really go into that topic where they've got much more time to develop those characters, and they have a lot of downtime, and they go into topics that movies simply wouldn't have time for. So just to give one example, there's an episode where Cameron makes a friend, where she infiltrates, I think it's a museum, because she needs something from historical records, and she befriends the night guard or something, and then that guard dies from some illness towards the end of the episode. And she kind of experiences grief. She doesn't really, because she can't really feel anything, but she's gotten attached to this human, and now the human is gone, and she can't process that her reaction to it, which is kind of almost an emotion. And that, I think, is very difficult to write and very difficult to act, and they do it really well. So just as a taste of where the show goes, right? Not every episode is like that, but a couple of them are like that. And I think that is something that a movie couldn't have done because there's no time. But because we have a lot of time in the show, we do get more into these kinds of aspects of the mythology.
Does her reaction and expression look like a malfunction when she's in those type of situations?
Not exactly. It's more like she doesn't, like she has a reaction and she can detect that she has the reaction, but she can't explain it and she doesn't know how to handle it.
Do we see more of that, or is it just in that scenario?
So that is one that is all up. So normally the episodes are not about Cameron, right? She's very much a supporting character, but in a few episodes she's the focus, and this is one of them. And there they really expand on what things look like from a Terminator's perspective.
In that gas station scene, Sarah was watching a conversation, and you saw something. I don't know what it was, if it was concern or just like worry, right? So how does that kind of develop? Like, I'm guessing John and Cameron get close.
So she poses as the sister from now on. So that already puts a limit on. So she like her cover identity is not the girlfriend, it's the sister, right? And he's like a 16-year-old boy. She's literally programmed to be close to him, right? So there are episodes where he kind of develops feelings for her that she can never reciprocate and shouldn't, and it's a bad idea anyway. But it doesn't take that very far, but that is always kind of in the subtext, that he basically is not, he's more mature than he was in Terminator 2, but he's not a fully formed adult yet, and he kind of just wants to be a regular teenager, right? Which also gives us a different glimpse into what John Connor is like at this age.
I feel like it's good that they went this route, because it's different from Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. Because there's never been that kind of like love interest aspect between
and in Terminator 2 there was the scene where the Terminator and John bond in the militia camp, right? And that scene mirrors that scene that you're referring to very 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 strongly, right? Where Sarah watches them, and then that's the scene where she reflects on, this is the closest he's ever gotten to a father figure, right? Where he's kind of bonding with this machine that is more of a father archetype to him, right? And here that's a different dynamic, right? And I think there's a few different things going on. One of them is that she's kind of concerned about how he will react to that new reality of having a Terminator in his life. And also it will be different than what it was because he's older and she doesn't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So the dynamic is different than it was. And also it means that the Terminator, like Skynet, is again closer to them than it was in the past, right? So it's like a bunch of different things all coming together. The status quo has changed in a way that she can't control, and she doesn't know how he's going to take it, and he doesn't know what he's going to do. And she doesn't know how big the actual danger from Skynet is. I think that all comes together in that scene where she watches John and Cameron interact at that gas station.
Speaking of Sarah and Skynet, so the two things which I also really liked about this was the two new missions. One mission was when John asked her to pretty much take it all away from him. As in, like, could you just, I don't know what he exactly said, but he said, can't you just stop all of this from happening for me? Like, pretty much stop him from becoming the Messiah, right? And then she accepted, which I was surprised. You guys remember that scene? So there was a scene where John, because obviously he was tired of moving around, and then he asked her, like, can't you just stop, like, can you just stop the Terminators or Skynet from, like, ever happening? Because he doesn't want to be the savior anymore. He doesn't want to be the leader of the resistance. So I don't know where they were, but there was a scene where he
Is it like middle of the episode where after the Terminator attack, and he's like kind of arguing, saying like he thought that she'd like changed the future by last movie or whatever, but like it's happening all over again, and I think they go into that conversation.
And then he pretty much gives her a hug as well when she was like yes, and then he was surprised as well. I was like, oh crap, like you're saying yes. Then do you not remember that scene?
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. So okay, that was after they had moved. He's not settling in well at that school, right? And he basically says, I can't do this forever. Do we really have to keep running? And didn't you stop this in the beginning, right? But I thought that was a really strong scene between those two characters, because you can see the tension between them, but at the same time you can also see that they're in this together, right? Yeah. Like when it really matters, they're on the same team, and that also she has sympathy for his frustrations, right? That he's not just the spoiled kid. He's like she wants to agree with him, but she realizes that she can't, right? Like he can just not have the kind of life he wants, and it's not his fault, and he can't be blamed for being upset about that.
That was one of the missions which was very interesting, because that kind of showed me change and breakthrough, but I don't know how long it's gonna last for, because it's like we said, we always saw Sarah just tough love. You're gonna become the leader of the resistance, but now we're seeing, which is like I'm not confused, but I'm a bit surprised that there's breakthrough. Is it like, did she react that way because she finally saw that, oh crap, like my son could die and I don't want him to die, so let me kind of like try and take away this burden from him? Or was there anything that we missed that got her to the point where she just said, all right, cool, I'm gonna try and change the future and stop you from becoming the leader? Because it was like she was proud. Like there was like, in a way, she was kind of like proud of him being like the leader of the resistance in, like, the second movie. I felt like there was some sort of pride behind her training him to become the resistance of the leader. So now that she kind of like said, all right, cool, I'll help you to kind of like not be the resistance of the leader anymore, I was a bit shocked. That's what I'm asking. Like, is there a reason why she kind of got to that point? Did I miss anything?
Well, I mean, stopping Skynet from being built was always the mission, right? And they thought they achieved it at the end of Terminator 2. And now they are not on the run from Skynet, they're on the run from the law, right? They're being pursued by police and CIA. And I think the scene that you're referring to, in that scene, Sarah kind of realizes that, yes, Skynet is in the process of being built again, but they now have an opportunity to stop it this time for good, right? So, and that gives her a mission, right? She's like, for almost 20 years at this point, she's been driven by that mission. So she gave up the idea of a normal life a long time ago, right? At the start of this episode, she's kind of settled into this idea that they're going to be on the run, not from Terminators, but from the law forever, right? Until Judgment Day happens, basically, which I think at this point, they kind of think it won't happen, but it might, right? So the original Judgment Day, I think, has passed. I think it was supposed to be in 97. Now it's 99. And I think they've kind of settled into this idea that either Judgment Day happens, in which case they become the leader of the resistance, or it doesn't happen, in which case they will spend the rest of their lives on the run from the law. And either way, they won't have a normal life. Right? And there's just a routine they have settled in. They move towns every 6 months. They don't have any personal connections that last. Right? That's a routine they've done apparently for years at this point. And the idea that there is now this other mission, which is somebody's again trying to build Skynet, and it's early enough that we can try to stop them. I think that is kind of a glimmer of hope for a third option, I think.
But that third option is pretty much what happened in Terminator 2, which is why I was going to say that's another mission which is interesting as well, because it's like, okay, you tried to kill someone, you tried to kill the person that was responsible for Skynet, and you couldn't do it. Are you now going to turn into that Terminator and assassinate someone who could be completely innocent?
Yeah.
And actually go through with it?
I mean, they're going forward to actual Judgment Day, which I think is meant to be like 2007 in this one, which makes it a little bit more different because, like, before you're like doing like preventative measures. I mean, this is still kind of preventive measures, but you're kind of tackling it at the actual critical point when sort of things are meant to go wrong. So it adds a little bit of a different dynamic, kind of knowing that it's still coming and we can actually like go to the actual date it's going to happen, so try to make the change at that point and sort of maybe change the future in that sense. But from what you're saying, Daniel, it seems like there's like this like interesting concept of like this Judgment Day being inevitable no matter what. Like, they're constantly trying to change the future, but everything they do, it might delay it a little bit, but this day is still sort of due to come, which is interesting. I don't know how like much they explore it in this. I wouldn't expect that they'd explore it much in there, but it just adds like an interesting kind of like story mechanic to it as well.
And this idea is from the movies, right? This whole idea of Judgment Day will happen no matter what, but you can change the conditions under which it happens and you can delay it from happening. But it's one of those things that's going to happen sooner or later. But I think the idea in this one is very much, we thought we stopped it, but then once the Terminators start showing up again, it's clear that no, they haven't, and it's happening again. And they just have to try again. And they're the only ones who can, because nobody else knows about it. So they don't really have very much of a choice. And the whole thing is not really a plan, right? They're constantly on the run until they get this out with the time machine, right? Where I thought it was kind of a cool idea that they have been sending other people back to do other things than kill people or protect people, where they have been building stuff for decades, and they've kind of these weapons caches lying around from people who went back earlier and put things into motion, which I think opens up a whole bunch of different plots as well that you could do, because there's no telling how many people went back and what they did, and there are episodes that go into this later on in the show.
Talking about like the whole like time travel stuff, kind of like final scene where she's obviously like on the news screen, and then the police chief doesn't quite see it because I think he's like distracted by something, but her like ex-partner that she leaves in there obviously sees her, and he's like kind of like moved forward in time. He's got like a whole like wife and this and the other. I was like, to me that was like super interesting in terms of like where they could possibly go with it, and like kind of like the stories that they could possibly tell from it. I was like, okay, this is it's a very interesting dynamic in terms of like, because it'll be like, you know, she just kind of like disappeared off the face of the earth for how many years, and she hasn't like aged one bit or whatever like that, and it just like added an interesting element there.
I actually didn't realize they were going into the future. I thought they were going into the past.
No, they go from, so it starts off in 99 and then they go forward 8 years to 2007. Okay. And I think Judgment Day is supposed to happen in 2011. So at that point, from the end of the pilot episodes, they have 4 years until Skynet goes live. And that's like basically the mission.
It feels like they're in an infinite loop. They're just changing one piece by 1 centimeter. That's why, yeah. Which is good, by the way.
And they do go into that. Like I don't remember off the top of my head what it exactly. So in Terminator 2, they had debris from the first Terminator, right? The chip and the arm and everything, and that allowed them to reverse engineer it. And they have something similar here. I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, but they have some technology that they're essentially reverse engineering. So there is a limit to how often they can invent Skynet. Right, because they need something to go off on. But what else are you going to do, right? Like other than just keep trying and hope this time it takes.
I'm interested in John's journey in this. Of course, his dynamic with Sarah as well, because I feel like again he's like almost kind of like regressed to sort of where he was at. Not completely where he was at the start of Terminator 2, but in terms of not accepting his responsibility or not accepting that, you know, he one day had to be the leader of like a resistance, which is fair enough, and you kind of have to like have a starting point for the character at the start of the series. But I'm very curious to see how they kind of like manage his journey and whether they actually like mold him to sort of eventually become the leader, and like whether his like character like develops and he starts to like build up the traits and this and the other, and how like that develops throughout the season. Because it wasn't annoying in this, but it was a bit like, come on, like you understand, like cut your mum a bit of slack. You've seen the Terminator, you've seen the threat, you've seen this, you understand why she's being the way she is, you understand why you need to move. And I think there is like a scene as well where they both say the same thing at the same time about you, like where the Cameron says, oh, like we're safe now, no one knows we're here. And then I think they both say at the same time, oh, like, you know, you're never really safe or something. I can't remember what the exact line was in the thing, but
something like that. Yeah, like there are moments in the pilot and also throughout the show where they really show how John and Sarah are a team, right? And no matter how much they are mother and son, they're also partners in this, right? And that they both have the same mission and they both believe in the same mission. And when it really matters, they're both dedicated to that. But in between, he's a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid who doesn't like to be told what to do and stuff like that, right? He doesn't really become a leader in this, right? But we see him learn lessons throughout the series that where you can see, okay, this is how he later on becomes the person that we've seen in the flashbacks. The show is very much run like Sarah is very much the center of the show, right? She's, or put a different way, she's the one in charge of the situation, of the plots, and when it comes to actually like fighting the Terminators or making plans, she's the one in charge because she's the adult. And then we have other episodes that focus more on John trying to be a normal person, while at the same time being reminded of the reality of the mission, right? So there's questions like, can he date? Can he go to school? Can he like do things that he wants to do? Or is it too dangerous? Will that make it too easy for the Terminators to find him? And where exactly is the line? And how much of a life can he have? Knowing that in a few years it will all be over anyway, like things like that. So that's one thing that works really well in the show. And another one is that they kind of expand on the mythology quite a bit. We have somebody teaching an AI how, like, about morality, right? Where somebody builds an AI that is not Skynet, but is something like Skynet. And the AI essentially has these long conversations with the scientists that build them about what morality is and what humanity is and what it's for and how to behave and what matters in life and stuff like that. And you can kind of see the AI learn lessons. You know that scene in Age of Ultron where Ultron, within about 10 seconds of being on the internet, learns that humanity is irredeemable and must be killed? They do kind of that, but over the course of 2 seasons, or like a season plus. So there's a lot of time where they kind of expand on this whole idea and they use this time. There's a lot of filler in this, and it's not a good show in the sense that there are a lot of episodes that don't amount to very much, but in between there are some amazing episodes, and the good ones are the ones that expand on the mythology in this way. Or like there are other resistance factions that don't think John Connor is going to win or has the right strategy or has the right priorities. And there are other Terminators that have other missions, or have gone off a mission, or have other tasks than the ones we've seen, right? So they take a lot of the basic ideas from the movies and then build off them and then kind of branch off in different directions. And because there's enough time to do that, there's some very cool episodes that come out of this.
I didn't expect to hear that there'd be like resistance fighters in this as well. But obviously, it's like they send back. Is it the people they send back in time, or is it people that are maybe have like caught wind of like potential Terminators?
I'm not going to spoil the whole thing, right? But I'm going to mention some things about the kinds of things they do. So one thing they do is that people start coming back from different futures. Mm-hmm. And they all think their future is the most important. And the other futures are expendable. Wow. That's one thing they do. Another one is that there are splinter factions within the Resistance, and they think Connor is losing the war, and he must be stopped. And so they kind of have the same mission as the Terminator, but they're human. And they're trying to fight the Terminator, and they think the best way to fight the Terminators is to kill John Connor. Wow. For example. Right? So there's all sorts of things going on. Mm-hmm. And there's like episodes where Cameron needs to transcend her programming or needs to be updated. And I think there's one where she kind of runs out of batteries and they need to find another one. And she's looks like she's going to die. And how do you mourn a machine? Should you? Things like that, right? So things like, it's like if you watch the Terminator movies and you make a list of cool things you could do at some point in movies, they just did all of them because they had the time. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like this show so much, even though it is full of filler and it has some really weak episodes and it ends on a cliffhanger that never gets resolved. But I think the best way to enjoy the show, unless you want to sit through the entire show, is to kind of look up recommended episodes, and you get maybe out of 2 seasons, you get maybe 7 or 8 or so that are really worth watching. And there's some really cool stories in here that really expand the Terminator universe in ways that the movies haven't. Right. So there was one other thing I wanted to bring up, is that the Terminator franchise for a long time, basically they have not had any new story since 2009 when Terminator Salvation came out. Everything since then has kind of been trying to do Terminator 2 again in some way. In some variation of the theme, they've not really moved the Terminator story forward, right? And then this show comes along, and it's a very flawed show, but it does some really cool stuff. And the stakes are lower because it's a TV show, and they can dedicate episodes to ideas that no movie ever would. And they have, like time-wise, 3/4 of the Terminator universe is this show, right? If you just add up runtime. So that is really, I think, the value of the show.
And that's the selling point, like I said, because obviously there are many other factors why the movies were so successful. And obviously, the series doesn't have, like we said, it doesn't have the capabilities of the movies due to budget and stuff. So the stories is the selling point, and the story so far is doing the franchise justice.
How was this received? Because it seems like there's like so many cool ideas in it, and you say like all the issues of like the Terminator movies that have come after it's trying to recapture the spirit of earlier Terminator movies without kind of progressing things forward. Whereas like in this, like from what you've said, is that there's like so many interesting, like you don't even have to like take everything here. You can take like one little aspect of it and expand it and make something like really interesting, really cool. So I'm interested to see like how was it received, and like why didn't they take those lessons from this instead of just trying to go down the nostalgia route?
Yeah, so I think initially it was very well received, and then it very quickly dropped off. So I've got some ratings here, and on average, 10.8 million people watched season 1 and 5.4 watched season 2. So exactly half. And the last episode was watched by 3.6 million people. So not amazing ratings, I think. But so I think this show kind of lost a lot of people along the way. And as a result, it never got to tell its story completely. And that's why it ends on this cliffhanger and with lots of unresolved ideas. And I think it has a whole bunch of really great ideas in it, but it's not full of ideas. It's like quarter full. And that's, I think, the problem, that a lot of, like, when you actually just sit down and watch this, like binge watch this thing, you will be bored out of your mind, I think, because the cool episodes are maybe a quarter of the entire runtime. And the others are a lot of wheel spinning, a lot of just rehashing ideas, a lot of filling time, because they have a certain episode count to fill. The second season was a full 22 episodes, so about 20 hours of Terminator stuff. And you can imagine how it's hard to keep that up the entire time, right? I think today it would probably be like an 8-episode mini series on some streamer with about 5 episodes worth of plot, and it would be a lot more condensed than that, right? And I think the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle, but this came out at a time where you had to fill 22 episodes that each had to be 40 minutes, and they just didn't have enough story, right? And I think that's really the problem with the show, and that's why I kind of said earlier, if you are going to watch this, unless you really have time to spare, I would just look at recommended episodes and see, okay, where are the good ideas? Because they're not in every episode, but the episodes that have one are really good. And it also shows the movies how it's done, right? Like that there actually are stories left to be told in this universe, and you don't have to remake Terminator 2 every time. So you kind of mentioned earlier that you're interested in watching another episode of this. After we've had this conversation, is this something you want to see more of, you want to check out, or is the pilot enough?
You kind of give me like mixed feelings on it, because you'd be like touch on some like really cool things that are due to come in the show, and like some like really cool like ideas that are explored. But then like if I remember correctly, like 2000s TV as well, like there in a lot of stuff there was like too much filler, and there's like too much of like pointless episodes which don't really lead anywhere. Which, to be honest, if there was like certain episodes that you selected and said like these are the good ones to watch, I'd probably watch it. I'd probably give it a watch and, you know, just kind of like see sort of how it's explored and how it's played out. But I don't think I'd check out 22 episodes. I actually didn't even realize there was 22 episodes. I think I'm like so stuck.
It's season 2. Yeah. There's 9 in season 1, so 31 episodes total.
Season 1's not too bad then. It's 9 episodes. Season 1 isn't the worst. Yeah, but I would just select episodes that you probably recommended and said were good ones to watch.
I'm very systematic, I realize, and I need order, so I wouldn't be able to just watch hand-picked episodes. I would have to just, like, you know, watch from start to finish. I just don't see myself just watching certain episodes. I just have to watch the whole thing. And which is a bit like, it's not risky, but it can be something which isn't a good idea, because you're saying there's certain episodes which isn't good. So it's like, if I do come across those episodes, I might just end up falling off if it is actually not that good. So that's why it might be a bit risky. But I was impressed with episode 1. So
I think it's definitely, like, if you like Terminator at all, I think this is worth checking out. I think it's got some great performances in it. Like Sarah Connor, I think, is great. It's like, it's not identical to the Linda Hamilton performance, but it is believably the same character. And Cameron, I think, also is a standout, where she plays the slightly off machine, but not in a stereotypical way. I think there's some great nuances in that performance. And I think John is also okay. Like, I think for some reason, there's never been a really good John Connor. Like in Terminator 2, he's kind of mixed, and here he's okay. There's an adult John Connor in Terminator 3. I'm not entirely sure just how good he is. I don't think he's that great either. So it seems like somebody really needs to give the definitive John Connor performance, and hasn't happened yet. Other than that, any other thoughts on Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles?
All good from me.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's talk. Hervé, can you please let the people know what they can do?
Let us know if you've checked out the Sarah Chronicles before. Let us know if there's any other Terminator movies that you feel are as good as 1 and 2 that we should probably check out as well. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
All right, guys, thank you very much, and we will catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.